With the closed beta ending and open beta right around the corner for Legends of Runeterra, I thought that I would share with you the decks that I've been playing in the closed beta. Now, I'm going to throw out some caveats here. Number one, these lists are far from refined. There's just not enough people playing in the closed beta to, I think, really get some of these lists refined all the way down. And number two, some of these lists I don't even think are going to be beyond meme status, if you will. But they were ideas that I wanted to try because during the closed beta, there's no risk or harm in doing something a bit wonky or just trying a new take on something. And as such, I just wanted to share these with you. So in the video description, I am going to put the deck codes to all 5 of these lists. I will likely be playing versions of these once the game does release so that I can get games in against other players, see if my hunches are correct, because some of these lists, as we go through them, I'll talk about cards that I think might not end up making the cut or cards that have underperformed in my small sample sizes of games already. And right out of the gate here, we're going to start with a mid-range deck. So this is a Fiora-based mid-range deck, and it is Demacia and Shadow Isles. And this one has been, I think, better than I thought it was going to be because it's based around utility. This is not a list that tries to win purposefully with Fiora. If you do win with her alternate win condition, just accidentally, then great. But that is not the intent here. This list is actually just running Fiora because I think she's a quality unit. I think Challenger is a decent keyword. 3/3 stat line is great. And if I'm being honest, like, Fiora hits the board and a lot of players will panic and use premium removal on her, and that frees up your other units to stay alive a little bit longer. So here's a quick glance at the curve. Pretty low to the ground because you're trying to get board presence early and often and then leave yourself open, you know, to other plays. So your 1-drops, I think that in these regions, these are like your best 1-drops in both region, right? Hapless Aristocrat is basically like a 2/2 in stats for the cost of 1. It's just providing a lot of utility. Even if you're just using this as a chump blocker to jump in front of bodies, it can save you a lot of health. It is just a great card, in my opinion, in Shadow Isles. Similarly, though this was recently adjusted and nerfed a bit, this is still a 2/1 for 1 that picks up a keyword, and as I said with Fiora, Challenger is a very good keyword, and this is the sort of 1-drop that can oftentimes trade up into a 2-drop or some even more expensive cards. So this is probably my favorite 1-drop in Demacia. Now, at the 2 slot, this is one of the cards that I'm unsure of. I've been playing around with it. The reason I like it is because it's a 3/2 body, but because of the fearsome tag, when you play this early, it very often can get in for somewhere between 3 and 6 damage, because unless they're also playing a 2-drop that has this 3 attack power, they're just not going to have a blocker for it. And if they do that, right, if they do play a 3/2 for 2, then you're just trading 1 for 1 even, which is, you know, an okay scenario. So I see the value here, but this is probably one of the weaker inclusions. Bright Steel Protector here. This is, again, a 3/2 for 2. This is giving something else barrier. If you follow me from the Elder Scrolls Legends, you know that mid-range Sorcerer, Ward Sorcerer, was one of my favorite decks in that game. This card facilitates a very similar playstyle. Now, the one thing that you have to know, though, is that it's not as powerful in Legends of Runeterra because the attacker is not choosing targets, right? The blocker gets to choose what is blocking where, so you don't get to generate as much value from the barriers as you may in other games, right? Like Divine Shield and Hearthstone, for example, is very much like Ward was in the Elder Scrolls Legends. Very, very strong. This is not as strong here, but still a powerful effect. Cursed Keeper, this is here because it allows us to, you know, basically get a 4/4 for 2. And though this can't block, there are some other enablers here, right? So I am running 2 copies of Glimpse Beyond. I'll just kind of jump ahead. This is a great card to hit with that. Glimpse Beyond, I think, is just a great utility card anyway, because if you are about to lose a unit, and specifically in a blocking scenario where you're blocking incoming damage, and once the blocker has been assigned, you also get to draw 2 cards for 2. A lot of times this is eating your spell mana. I like Glimpse Beyond a lot, but this gives you another solid card to target with it. So overall, having this interaction in here I think is nice, but this is all about just trying to get the most, bang for your buck, the most stats for your investment. Vile Feast, this is here to be kind of a combat trick and give you a free Spiderling, and then the Spiderling, much like Hapless Aristocrat over here, is just a good body, good blocker. Fiora, as I said before, this is really about just a 3/3 challenger more than anything. And in that same vein, I'm also running 1 copy of Laurent Duelist, where this is a 3/2 for 3, but you get to give an ally challenger this round. So this allows you to, maybe pick something smaller and take a great value trade in your favor. Vanguard Redeemer, this is here just basically as a great cycler. So when you're in combat and you're losing units, a 3/3 for 3 that draws a card is great. Then we start getting into the more expensive side of the curve, right? So at 5, I'm running 1 back-to-back. I think this is one of, if not the best combat trick in the game because it's very cost efficient. 5 mana to potentially deal 6 extra damage to your opponent at burst speed is huge. The fact that it's burst speed and it's also protecting your units if they're targeting you with like an Undying Grasp or something, and you get to save your unit, and again it's burst speed and they don't get a chance to interact. This is just a big deal. I want to talk about this card for a minute. This card is like really powerful because it forces a lot of tough decisions on your opponent, and I'm only running 1 copy right now, but I could easily see this going up to 2 when I end up finalizing this list. And I would also not be shocked if at some point this card gets adjusted. I could see this easily costing 6 mana, or maybe they make a change thematically to where it's got to be a unit and a unit it's supporting, so a unit and a unit next to it to kind of give it that thematic back-to-back feel. Because right now it's just any 2 allies get +3/+3 at burst speed, and that is huge. So anyway, 1 back-to-back, but I think when I refine this list, this will likely become 2. Garen, this is, in my opinion, just like a mid-range staple. A 5/5 for 5 with a keyword is solid. The fact that this keyword is regeneration, so it allows you to be defensive on your turn, and then also, openly attack into your opponent unless they have something big enough to trade into it, I think just makes him a very good unit. And then if you can get him to survive long enough to level up, the start of round rally effect is very strong. So just running Garen because in my opinion he's a solid mid-range unit. In fact, most of our top end here are just solid mid-range inclusions. So Radiant Guardian is like 1/2 of the reason I even started building this list. So Radiant Guardian and Rasa the Sunderer, in my opinion, are like 2 of the best mid-range cards in the game. Radiant Guardian here is a 5/5 for 5, but it gains lifesteal and tough if an ally died this round. That is really good. A 5/5 for 5 that has lifesteal and tough can really help you stabilize against aggressive lists, and it's a very resilient stat line. You're above that magic 4 health number for dodging removal. The tough on top of it makes it even more resilient. Radiant Guardian is just, in my opinion, a really solid card. And then I'm going to jump ahead a bit. Rasa might be my favorite card in the game. A 7/5 with pseudo evasion, right? Fearsome. A 7/5 with a keyword for 7, and on the play you kill the 2 weakest enemies if an ally died this round. So very similar to Radiant Guardian, you need something to have died already this round, but this is a huge tempo swing. I think Rasa is just insane. Again, Rasa might be one of the best cards in the game in my opinion. It's easily one of my favorite cards currently in the game. I like this card so much, I want Riot to put Rasa in as a champ I can play in League of Legends because it is bonkers how good this is. Rounding out the rest of the list, right now I'm running 1 Cithria the Bold. This was for testing reasons. This could easily become that second back-to-back. I do like it. I mean, a 6/6 for 6 is okay. And giving other battling allies +1/+1 and fearsome for the round. This I was originally testing as like a bunker buster against aggressive go wide lists. So if you're playing against like an Elise list that has a lot of, 1/1 and 2/2 spiders running around, being able to give your squad +1/+1 and then fearsome so that they're maybe not blocked by the chump blockers, I felt like was, worth testing. So I threw it in as a one of, but I'm not necessarily sold on it staying. So this is potentially removed, but I think it's worth testing. One copy of Vengeance. I think in a mid-range list, giving yourself an out like this is probably fine, especially at fast speed, but you're not playing control, and if I'm being honest, Vengeance is kind of overcosted, even though it is just straight hard removal. You don't want your hand full of these, right? You want to be proactive, at least in terms of developing your board most of the time. And then I'm running a one of Judgment, mostly because you're running Fiora, so you want your opponent to respect the Fiora Judgment combo. You want them to have to respect, attacking into you, right? If they attack into you and you can, in the later stages of the game, block and wipe their whole board because they don't have any combat tricks to keep things alive, like this is the kind of card that just accidentally wins a game from time to time. And so in my opinion, like including one of it as a silver bullet is entirely fine. If you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, this card is basically like Unstoppable Rage, and you know how powerful that card could be. So I like it right now as a one of. It's been fine in the list. I certainly like this more than say like Cytheria so far. So when you're looking for cards to potentially cut, to maybe add that second back-to-back or add some other early game units that you prefer, I think that Cytheria is more likely to get cut than, say, Judgment. So that is this list. This is the mid-range Fiora, like curvy Fiora. Now, I call this one curvy Fiora because you're trying to play, units on curve early on. This list, however, is much closer to the Fiora combo list. So this is the second list I'm going to share. Again, I don't think this is necessarily refined, but this is all about trying to win with Fiora's actual combo, and you do that by just continuing to protect her with barrier and then forcing her into combat scenarios. So first off, we have Green Glade Caretaker. This card gets bigger anytime an ally gets barrier, and it's a permanent +2/+0. So this thing is a one drop that can scale completely out of control, especially once you get a Shen down. This is like your alternate win condition, because sometimes they're just going to have the removal for Fiora. You're never like going to bank on just winning with her. You need to have a secondary win condition. Caretaker lets you continue to pressure your opponent while also making them like worry about Fiora. Inspiring Mentor I was running because I wanted to be able to buff Fiora while in hand for obvious reasons. Bright Steel Protector, it's a 2-drop, but you're trying to play this later because again, you're trying to play this when you're about to attack with Fiora. You give her barrier and then use her challenger to trade into a unit. Currently running 2 Blade Twirlers because we're not running like a full stun recall package in this list, but there are some stuns and recalls at the top end of the curve, and I do like that this has quick attack, so I'm running a pair of them. This could easily come out for other units though, so again, as I'm thinking about cards that I would consider switching, this fits that bill. The Green Glade Duo is very much like the Caretaker. It's kind of your backup win condition because it's an elusive unit that can sometimes get bigger. The 1 health is a liability, I'm not going to lie to you, but every round it sticks around, it's basically free damage, and if you can protect it with, effects like deny, effects like the other barriers, again, it's a great source of consistent pressure. Single combat. These are for you to make Fiora attack other enemies and kill them so that you can trigger your combo. I mean, if it sounds like I'm being super sarcastic there, it's because you should know what this is for. 3 denies. I don't think many decks are going to want to run 3 denies when the meta starts to settle. Like if you're running Ionia, I think that you're going to end up running into scenarios where 2 is entirely fine, maybe even less. But in this particular deck, especially like in the early stages of Runeterra's life, I think you might want to go overboard a bit, and also just, again, this is another way to protect your Fioras. So then Fiora, Prismatic Barrier, again, give her Barrier, use the Challenger. Repost is, again, give her Barrier, use the Challenger, but also a source of burst damage with that +3/+0. So again, going back to the idea of Caretaker or the duo here as being potential alternate win conditions, playing something like this on them is a great way to pump up the damage. Shen here, really it's meant to protect your Fiora, but again, as you're trying to activate your alternate win conditions, it's a constant source of barrier, and then once he's leveled up, when an ally gets barrier from any source, they get +3/+0 this round. So it really ramps up the effects of things like Prismatic Barrier. Speaking of barrier, Spirit's Refuge. This is like a stabilization tool. So sometimes you don't draw Fiora early enough and you're playing against an aggressive list and they get the jump on you. Being able to give an ally not just barrier to survive the trade, but also lifesteal to help you kind of stabilize your health a bit, stall things out until you can find your Fiora is a pretty big deal. So it's a kind of a 2-in-1 there. As I said before, we're running right now a pair of the Blade Twirlers, and we don't really have good hard removal in this list outside of like making Fiora attack things. So right now I was running 2 Will of Ionia. I don't think these are going to end up making the cut either. I think these and the Blade Twirler get cut for like better utility. Again, 1 back-to-back. I would like to see probably these and the Blade Twirlers cut to have this go up to a 2, and then maybe add some other more effective early game units. But this is the version that I had while filming this, so I'm showing it. And then like end game closers or bombs, 1 Wind Chaser, because a 6/6 that stuns 2 enemies is, you know, good enough. And Mina can sometimes win the game by herself, so running a 1 of each at the top end. And for the most part, that's the list. If you watched any of the preview patches, you should be pretty familiar with what that deck's trying to do. Next up is Jinx and Draven, and this is something that I played a lot during the preview patches. This is all about discarding your hand, trying to level up Jinx, but also trigger some free effects when you discard. So Jury Rig, for example. When cast or discarded, you summon a Scrap Scuttler, which is just a 1/1. But the idea here is that you get free value if you discarded it, right? The non-discard portions are just aggro tools, right? Cheap cards that you can pressure your opponent, and then you're trying to finish them off with Jinx in this particular list. So Jury Rig, this is just a 3/2. Yeah, it can't block, but it's a 3/2 for 1, so it's aggressive. This is like a 3/1 when you're attacking the Nexus, but again, just an aggressive 1-drop. Boom Crew Rookie, I love this card. It used to be a 0/4. The fact that it's a 1/4 now, I think it feels really good when you play it. I'm a big fan. Chompers is another card that you get to play for free when you discard. Grenadier here, again, this is just a cheap aggressive card that's trying to get damage on that Nexus. Mystic Shot, because it's burn straight to the Nexus, or you can use it to kind of clear threats out of the way and plow the road. Sump Dredger here is a discard enabler, and it's a big body with the 4/3 stat line for 2. I'm running 1 map just on the off chance that you want to, for example, give like Sump Dredger elusive. This is my only 1 of in the deck. This could easily be something else. If there's a better tech card you like, this is the first thing you cut, but it's something I was experimenting with. Draven. Draven I ran a lot during the preview patches, specifically the first one, because he used to be a 4/3. He has been nerfed to a 3/3, and I'm not sure if he ends up making the final cut. I think I need more testing. The main reason I was running him is because, not of him, like a 3/3 for 3 with quick attack is okay, but the big thing is on play or strike he makes a spinning axe. Now you use the spinning axe to level him up, but the big thing here is that to play you also discard a card and you give an ally +1/+0. So it's both your discard enabler and a bit of burst when, and literally it's a burst spell, when you're attacking. So in many ways I'm still kind of running Draven just for the axes, but I'm not sure Draven ends up making the final cut. This could easily be a list where you're just running Jinx as the only champion. Get excited, 3 damage to anything, so this can be Nexus or threats, and also a discard enabler. This is just a 5/4 for 3, big boy body. Jinx here, point of the deck. I'll come back to her in a moment. And then your top end is 3 copies of Augmented Experimenter, because this is a 3/3 that also lets you deal 3 damage to an enemy unit, so you can clear out a threat, but also you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So if you have less than 3 cards, you're gaining cards, but because you discard your hand in between, you auto level up Jinx, right? So Jinx here says you level up when your hand is empty, and then when you level up, she becomes a 5/4 with quick attack. At the start of your round, you draw an extra card per turn, so you really, after you've played an Experimenter, ramp up your available cards. But then the first time you empty your hand each round, you also create a fleeting Super Mega Death Rocket. If you don't know what that does, it does 4 to the enemy Nexus and 1 to all other enemies. But again, if you empty your hand with Jinx, she levels up, you start making Death Rockets, and this is an auto way to level her up. And then the second one, or if you've already leveled her up and you play the first one, again, you discard your hand and then draw the card, so you will trigger the Death Rockets. So this is, in my opinion, if you run Jinx, you're running Experimenter. It's just a solid 3 of in any list where you're running Jinx, in my opinion. It's a really good card. It's your enabler, and that's it for the list. So pretty straightforward. Like I said, stuff, if you're looking for cuts or you want to try other things out, map is the first thing you cut for sure. I was just testing it. Draven here, I don't know if it's going to end up making the cut now that he's only a 3/3. I like the axes, but his stat line is like below your followers most of the time. Next up, I've got Thresh Control. So my thought process with this deck was I wanted to use Thresh to cheat out an early Tryndamere, and I think that this is a good way to do it, and I think that there might even be better ways. Haunted Relic is not currently in this list, and I think that it is potentially worth including, because this counts as 3 things dying for Thresh, but I don't know what to take out for it, because this is a really tight list. So when you're looking at the list here, 1 Fading Memories, this is just a utility card because it's at burst speed. Yes, it's making an ephemeral copy of something, but the idea was that you wanted to either copy Rasa, or I'm running 1 copy of She Who Wanders. So if you're copying any of them, then you don't even really care about the fact that they're not sticking around. Like, they have massive play effects, right? Like when they hit the board, they're very powerful. Even in a pinch, if you just need to draw, playing something like Babbling Bjerg is also acceptable. But we're trying to fit Haunted Relic in. Maybe this gets cut. I'm kind of a fan of having at least the 1. Hapless Aristocrat, again, I'm just a huge fan of in general in Shadow Isles. Sentry here, this is, I mean, it looks vanilla, but it's just a really good Freljord card, right? It's a 2/1 for 2. When it dies, you draw a card, so it cycles itself. Helps you contest early. Black Spear here for removal. Glimpse Beyond, more card draw, and Glimpse Beyond on your Sentry can just flush your hand in the late game, which is nice. Currently running Ice Veil Archer. This could also become that Haunted Relic if you want to focus more on the Thresh. I like Archer because it locks down 1 unit's attack, but it also trades up pretty well because of the 3 power that it has. But this could very easily become Haunted Relic as well if you want to focus more on trying to trigger Thresh. Vile Feast is a pretty big staple. Avalanche here is a pretty big staple for control decks. Bjerg here is just, in my opinion, all about drawing your Rasas and potentially your She Who Wanders. The other reason that Bjerg is really important is because it has 3 power, so it helps you block those fearsome units. The box has been growing on me. There's not a lot of good fast speed board sweeps, and if people are not paying attention, they might just try to empty their hand, right, to set up a big attack. And if they do that, you can really punish them with the box. So even just running a couple copies of the box to force them to play around it, I think is going to be beneficial to you. Grasp of the Undying it's just fast speed removal. I mean, you need combat tricks to kind of deter people from open attacking into you, and so this helps. Again, Thresh was here because I wanted to kill my opponent's units, and then maybe get a free Tryndamere. I could very much see you not running this combo. I could actually see a version of this list existing where you're not running champions at all. But like I said, I wanted to test, and I've been trying to make Thresh work a bit during the closed beta. Sometimes he works, sometimes he doesn't. When he works, sometimes it's pretty funny. Rasa, you've heard me say it a million times, huge fan of this card. Does not change in this instance. Vengeance is a one of, mostly because we've got other forms of removal early on, and then even, you know, in terms of like hard removal, a couple turns later we're running a pair of Ruinations as well, so like these are your panic buttons. Tryndamere is basically one of your two finishers, the other one being She Who Wanders, and that's the list. So you'll notice a bit different from some of the preview patch stuff, and that's because I don't think personally that weirding stones or the catalyst are really worth running right now. I could be wrong. Maybe I hope I'm wrong. I'd like to see some form of ramp still viable, but both of those were hit pretty hard. Now the last list I have here is an aggressive list that is basically trying to trigger Lucian and or Senna, or you know, hopefully both of them. So it's a pretty standard like Shadow Isles token list. This is the sort of thing where it's a spider list, right, with Elise. So we've got things that kill allies, and then once allies have died, you summon spiderlings. Like I said, this is my favorite Demacia 1-drop, favorite Shadow Isles 1-drop. Black Spears for removal. This is a great thing for your self-kill cards. Elise just generates more bodies. Glimpse Beyond, more card draw and self-kill. Now the self-kill stuff is important because, like I said, this list I'm running 3 copies of Lucian, 3 copies of Senna. So either one of these gets a big boost when the other one dies. So if you're in combat, and so this is the big thing with something like this, because this is fast speed, right? If you're in combat and somebody like blocks your Lucian but Senna's unblocked, even though you're going to lose your Lucian, sometimes it might be worth it for you to just sacrifice this to go ahead and draw 2 cards, but then also make her, you know, hit for 10. Because that's what happens, right? If she's unblocked and you've got the Lucian somewhere in combat and you use something like Glimpse Beyond to kill your Lucian, she's got quick attack normally. She picks up double attack and +1/+1. So she swings for 10. It's a big swing. So a lot of this deck is to enable that. Vile Feast, again, just combat trick, gives you bodies. Dawn Speakers are here because you're making a lot of like little bodies. This helps them grow. Skitterer is, again, kind of more combat tricks on a body because you have enough spiders. Again, Senna's part of the Lucian combo. Speaking of Senna and Lucian, Chronicler of Ruin is a great way to, you know, level up Lucian really quickly. So Lucian levels up even if you don't have Senna, right? If you just have 4 allies die, then Lucian will level up naturally. But again, kind of that same thing. If you play this Chronicler and you hit Senna or Lucian, it's going to come right back anyway, but you're going to essentially, like, I say level up because Senna doesn't technically level up, but you're going to level up one of your 2 heavy hitters. And then 1 back-to-back and 1 Rasa because I'm just huge fans of these cards in general, so I want to include some copies of them. I could see yourself making some cuts somewhere to maybe up either one of those to 2, right? Specifically because with Lucian and Senna, you've got these quick attack units, so if they try to block with a bigger body, being able to back-to-back and save your quick attack unit without losing it is a big deal. So I could definitely see trying to fit in at least 1 more of these, but I don't know for what. So again, like I've said for all of these lists, not refined yet, but these are the 5 that I was kind of toying around with in the closed beta. There's a lot of lists left that I still have not tried. There's some Piltover spell lists that I played during the first preview patch that I just haven't had a chance to take a crack at yet. Man, there's like so many decks I want to try. I'm so excited for open beta to finally be here and make regular content and try new decks and do some fun things and hopefully cast some events. So anyway, that's it for this. Like I said, I just wanted to share some of the decks that I've been playing in the closed beta. These are not refined lists. I do not claim at all to have nearly enough games in on these to have any sort of a real sample size. Just ideas I've been tossing around. Hopefully something inspires you. That's the real reason I'm doing this. I just wanted to inspire you. So I want to know, Do any of these lists appeal to you? Are there other lists that you're dying to try? You know, what are you most excited to do when the game is finally live and you can dive in and play? So if you made it this far, thank you. Open beta is right around the corner, and, you know, don't forget to have fun.